Okay, so for my final project presentation, this is Sean Mussenden. I am going to walk through the analysis I did looking at pockets of communities across the U.S. where homeowners are underwater on their mortgage. That is, they owe more on their mortgage than the value of their house is worth. I'm going to walk through through how I did it, and then going to show some of the results. So there were two data sources used for this project. The first was from the real estate intelligence firm Zillow, which detailed the underwater rate for each U.S. zip code in 2017. So I'm going to start by loading up that data. So I'm going to go to File, add a new delimited text layer, Browse, and here it is. This is CSV. And I'm going to check CSV. First record has field names. There's no geometry here. We're going to join this later to a shapefile. So I'm going to go ahead and add this in and close this. And we can look at it by opening the attribute table. And we see we've got for each zip code in the US, there's a bunch of stats, but what we're going to be looking at is the percent of homes in that zip code that are negative equity. Okay, need to do one little bit of conversion here just to make sure this will join property later. So I'm going to go to Properties and click on the Field Calculator. And right now there's a field called effective negative equity rate, and it's stored as a string. So I'm just going to create a new column that has that as a number. So I'm going to put number effective negative equity rate, and then I'm going to drop in a expression here, to real effective negative equity rate. And if we scroll down, we can see, let me redo that. Let's try that one more time. Store it as an integer. And okay. Just go ahead and apply that. And I'm going to take away this first one here. Okay. Next thing is we're going to load in the shape files. So going to go to my vector layer here and add in, there's my shape file, and this is from the census, and it is the boundaries for each zip code in the US. And I'm going to add that, close it down. All right, so you see we've got each zip code in the US here. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to join them together. So I'm going to go to Properties and Join, and add a new layer to join. I'm going to join it to negative equity summary zip. Got the negative effective rate, and the join field is the join field is region name and ZICTA 510CE. These both contain the zip codes in our two data sets. Only want to keep one join field, which is this last equity rate here. And I'm going to hit OK and apply. Okay. Now right. Now I'm going to export this as a layer, and I'm going to call this, yeah. All right. And I'm going to add it to the map. And it's going to take a second to process there. Okay, I'm going to uncheck that one. Now I'm going to filter just for the very high negative equity zips. So I'm going to go to filter, and the greater than 0.5. So this will be all of the zip codes where more than half of the homes, or half or more of the homes, are underwater, where homeowners are underwater. And gonna hit OK. All right, so now we see all of the pockets across the US where there are negative equity of greater than 0.5. Now I'm going to do a couple things here. The first is what we're really looking for is clusters of high negative equity places, and I'm defining clusters as places where 2 or more zip codes join. So the first thing I'm going to do is create a new layer detecting the edges where 2 polygons touch, meaning like there won't be any edge here because it's not touching another polygon, but there will be an edge here. So the Saga package has something for that. It's called Shared Polygon Edges. So I'm going to go to, from this joined layer, the attribute doesn't really matter here. And I'm going to hit run. It'll take just a second to process. Okay. All right. So now we can see these edges. If I turn it off, on and off my zip code layer, it creates an edge there every time they touch. So we're going to use this information as a way to identify and single out our clusters. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to buffer the edges. Right now they're lines, and I need to have them as polygons for the next step. So I'm going to go up to buffer, and we're going to do the edges layer. The distance, it's in degrees. I'm going to set it really, really small, 0.001. And I'm going to run this and close it. So effectively what that does is they're still the same size, but now it's a polygon here, which will allow us to do the next step, which is to filter out our zip codes only if they intersect with a line. So for that, I'm going to go to the processing toolbox, and I'm going to select extract by location, and I'm going to extract features from USZTA joined. This is my filtered shapefile where the features intersect by comparing them to the features for buffered. I'm going to run this. And that'll take just a minute here. Okay, it's done. So now we can see, if I turn on my main join layer, so this is everything, it's green. And extracted is only those where they're touched. So we can see, right, that this one, because it has 3 polygons that touch, was extracted in the final accounting, whereas this one, which doesn't touch anything, wasn't extracted. So when I zoom out, now I've got basically the clusters. All of the spots with a majority of homeowners with negative equity in a zip code that's touching another zip code. So we're looking for clusters of these places, sort of larger areas. Okay, from here, the last thing I'm going to do is style this layer so that into 5 breaks using the Viridis color scale. And I'm going to classify. said classify. Sure, that's not working. Oh, forgot to pick a column. Negative E, and classify it, and doing it along natural breaks. So now we can see all of these individual clusters, and it's got the specific negative equity amount. So now when we do our analysis, we can see if there's a part of a cluster that's worse off than others. So I'm just going to turn on OpenStreetMap, which will allow us to see the location of some of these places, and just walk through some of the findings. The analysis revealed about 30 clusters of high negative equity zip codes in the U.S. What I was able to see, these clusters were concentrated mostly along the East Coast and some spots in the Midwest. There really weren't that many on the West Coast. There was one small one here in Sacramento. But for the most part, the sort of biggest collections that I saw were in and around Wilmington and Fayetteville, North Carolina. Also in the Washington, D.C. suburbs, Charles County and St. Mary's County. There was also a fairly significant pocket near Tuscaloosa, Alabama, also near Columbus, Georgia, and Atlanta. And then on the south side of Chicago, a really good amount. In central Missouri, south of Columbia, some of the highest negative equity rates in the entire country. And in central Oklahoma as well. So from here, I'm going to create the final JPEG, but just because I'm running out of time, I'm not going to show that here. But this is how I did my project. Thanks.